Want to know what your dog is thinking?
Have a challenging dog behavior you need help with?
The Dish on Dogs is your source for all your canine questions.
Improve your relationship with your dog and deepen your understanding of your furry friend. Right here on the Dish on Dogs. Welcome everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode and most informative episode of the Dish on Dogs in the history of our podcast. And I mean this. Look back. If you missed one and want to listen to something very interesting, look for the NYPD 3 podcast series. Today I have with me one of the most amazing canine handlers, really, and I mean this, I'm not just blowing smoke up his butt. His background is so rich, nationally renowned. He's currently the head of Homeland Security Region 1 training program. I can go on and on about his resume. It's amazing. He's at Ground Zero, 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center, the Murrow building. He's like really on the forefront, one of the pioneers, not the pioneer, but one of the pioneers in all aspects of canine handling. And that's what we want to talk about. We left off on our last episode talking about the amazing abilities of a dog's olfactory, their sense of smell, what gives them such a contribution to society is their ability to smell things that are invisible to the human eye or human nose. So joining me today, again, is my good friend and past colleague. We were founding members together of the NYPD Canine Unit in 1985. My good friend Bob Schnell is joining me again. Thanks again, Bob.
Thanks, Mike.
This is going to be another good episode. It's a little light. This is hopefully going to be a little lighthearted. The last episode, we kind of really talked about the tragedies canine handlers experience when you're in search and rescue. You're recovering both live and dead bodies, and that just comes with the territory. And when you have a 40-year career like Bob does, it takes its toll emotionally, physically. So, these are, I wouldn't say they're unsung heroes, they're heroes, but it takes a special person to be able to go to work and do this and call to duty. It could be, he's watching his phone, he's watching his thing, the next tragedy could be taking place as we speak, and he is then involved in all aspects of this. Oh, so Bob, he's showing me a picture of James Gall. So talk a little bit about, catch us up to where we left off.
So, post 9/11, we did a lot of stuff to enhance the search and rescue dogs because it became a big thing throughout the country. People wanted to help. People asked, how can I help? How can I contribute? What can I donate? Of course, during 9/11, they donated tons of dog food, dog booties, right, everything you can imagine to help the dogs down at Ground Zero, which we deeply appreciated. And a lot of that was donated to shelters and different places because, our dogs are on strict diets, as you know. But we had a lot of celebrities come to the forefront and did a lot of fundraisers for us. USA Network, we were honored at the Westminster Dog Show, which is kind of a funny story, after 9/11, because that's the prim and proper dogs of the dog world, being groomed in the back, and here we come with our police dogs walking through the backstage, and they're being combed and groomed and blow dried, and here we are, the police dogs walking out, and we get a standing ovation on live TV, and they donated Purina Dog Food, donated a check, and so seeing our police dogs being honored the way they were, and search and rescue, and I went live the next day on Good Morning America with Diane Sawyer. Funny story, we're under the lights and cameras in Times Square. It's a live TV show. It's not taped. And my dog was so exhausted from working so much and being at all these events. She was petting him, and the dog just dropped and fell on the floor and went to sleep. She goes, Diane Sawyer pets him, and she was a dog lover. And people do associate with dogs. As much as they might not always like police officers or whatever, for whatever reason, they like animals. The dogs. So the dogs become a bond between the police and the community and then the world,
Right. And that's one of the stories, talking about your Diane Sawyer interview. I remember, being at Ground Zero with all the dogs, and there would be news reports that the dogs were so depressed from finding bodies, but that really wasn't the case. They were overworked.
Yeah, they were definitely overworked.
So when you saw dogs passing out from
exhaustion.
Right, because their job was they couldn't relate the emotional factor of finding
We
bodies.
were working 12 hours,
Right.
no days off, and the dogs, just like us, were physically and emotionally
Right.
drained. You know?
Right, and realistically, they can really only work for 20 minutes, half hour at maximum, and then they need to be rested and given
Right.
water. So yeah, so a lot of, I remember seeing the stories in the Post that said the dogs were depressed from finding so many, but it really was a misunderstanding. They were just exhausted. You or me, you could never work a dog that much. You couldn't work that. You said you were working 80 hours a week.
Yeah, we were
constant.
we weren't getting any breaks. The dogs weren't getting any breaks. But I gotta say, our unit, in particularly the NYPD K9 unit, we had a lot of teams around the country help us out, which we appreciated. But after the first or second week, they left, and we were there till the end, till May 30th,
Right.
till they shut the pile down, and
Right.
the recovery effort was over. So we did 90% of the work down there, and I think our dogs really were up to task
Right.
and did a phenomenal job.
And then since then, or during then, you really expanded and really focused in on search and rescue and cadaver dog training, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you were with one of the premier agencies, the Connecticut State Police was one on the forefront of cadaver dog.
I became an instructor for FEMA. I traveled the country. I was an evaluator. I certified teams down in Miami, Florida, down in Fairfax, Virginia, Maryland. And I really embraced that part of K9 because it was so rewarding.
Right, and as weird as that sounds, how could it be rewarding finding, we talked about this in the last episode, apprehending criminals is always controversial. Right. There's always some side that, and using police dogs is controversial for sure. But when you do search and rescue work or cadaver work, it's rewarding in the sense that you're bringing closure to somebody. Exactly. When you have a hit, meaning you find a body, hopefully it's alive, which I'm sure you had some experiences in that. But unfortunately, by and large, you're recovering deceased bodies or body parts in that case. So, and again, to do it for 40 years is kind of incredible to me. I couldn't do that. I couldn't do it. It's too emotionally draining for me. So now doggy daycare, I play with dogs or interact with dogs rather than those very stressful situations. But then as we're talking off the air, we're kind of talking about I don't know if they're funny. I guess for cops it's funny. Yeah. And I was talking about when I trained cadaver dogs, was involved in training cadaver dogs in the mid-90s. It wasn't a big, well-known thing. It was again, you were a pioneer in this. But we used body parts. There's no getting around that, right? If you're looking for a deceased...
It's just like anything else. You want to train on the real thing, whether it's in any field. We don't like to use pseudo for narcotics.
Pseudo meaning artificial odor.
Artificially made, and they do actually have pseudo cadaverine. But you do... The only way you can train is to train for the real deal, which the real deal being, real body parts. It might seem morbid. It is a little morbid. You have to have some type of, I don't have a medical field background, but you become friends with certain people, and then medical, and they do help assist you. I won't get into particulars because, it's still to this day something that to train these dogs properly, you need... Whether you have to build a rubble pile to find people in a rubble. Right. I built a rubble pile from the New York City Police Department. I got reprimanded for some of the things that I had to do to train our dogs, but it's taken off to the next level where they have it at Floyd Bennett Field. They have a premier rubble pile certified for training dogs on.
But that's what's interesting, and we got to talk about it a little bit. Again, we have a kind of a warped sense of humor. When you do this for 40 years, you kind of have to have a sense of humor. Because everybody's been traumatized by all of this, but you can't go 40 years, with your just saddened. So back in the day, the only way to find and again, this is kind of the behind the scenes. You had to have human tissue, so you can use your imagination, but you had to have human tissues. We all had our ways, and then and cadaver dog work is most interesting because it's the most complicated because human odor. Or deceased dead bodies, they change odor constantly depending on the weather, depending on the vegetation. So we used to have to plant tissue, human tissue, throughout in different times of years, and it was like a planting garden in a sense. And you have to know if the dog can alert in the spring on the human tissue that was left out in the fall over all the decomposition.
You're talking about potentially looking for bodies that could be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I had one that was buried under concrete for 8 years.
And you
The
already
dog
got a
found
positive hit, which is
So,
amazing.
You know, to train for that is almost impossible, but you have to, different levels of depth, burying the body, how many feet down. So it is a very complicated scientific type.
It is.
But you're still just depending on the dog's olfactory ability to, amazingly, to my amazement to this day, my dog Zeus found things that I was almost like, how did
Couldn't
he find
happen,
it?
right?
I was almost like shaking my head. There's
Right.
no way he found it, and have detectives behind me like, oh
Right.
my God, I can't
Right.
believe this dog found this.
Right.
We've been searching for this body. We came through this field or this lot numerous times.
And I think that's the most amazing thing. Any canine handler would tell you that we because we can't smell the way they do,
right.
it's almost impossible. So whether that's recovering a gun, recovering anything, you're almost always. I always was in astonishment.
Right.
It's pitch black out. I've had situations where I was stepping on things that a dog would recover and be at my feet. So yeah, it's an amazing thing. But there is that and one of the things is you are an expert in the field, and when I testify in court, as we talked about, I rely on your knowledge to say what's possible and what's not possible. So, but it's an amazing thing. I'm never more. And the other thing we were talking about off the air is, at least back then, it was unregulated. So you had people showing up, and I had people showing up at Ground Zero, and they were well-intentioned people, but they didn't really know what they were doing.
Right.
And that kind of, because you can't ask the dog. So then we talked about that. And I always find the cadaver part really interesting because I get involved with these no-body homicides and stuff. And it's up to the dog handler. I have to kill somebody. No, it's up to the dog handler to interpret what the dog's telling you. So there is some smoke and mirrors because you can interpret it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because especially with any type of scent work, especially people don't know the capabilities of the dog, so you have to explain the capabilities.
Right.
And you're the expert witness. You're the subject matter expert. I've testified in court on homicides, and honestly, certain people don't even know what question to ask you because they don't know anything about what you do.
Right, they see it on television. They
So,
think dogs
you know,
are rin-tin.
And this is what dogs have evolved to. They've solved homicide cases. They've recovered evidence that probably would have never been recovered. I mean,
absolutely.
Certain cases are now open. One of them big here on Long Island currently.
Gilgo Beach.
Because of a dog, that recovered a body that turned into a serial type, we think, killer.
Absolutely.
So the capabilities of a dog are astounding. I go to work every day. I still train, and every day a dog will show me something that I was like, wow, that's incredible.
Because it's our inability to understand. So they truly have extrasensory perception.
We call it change of behavior, reading the dogs, change of behavior, all these terms. But if you say that to the average layperson, they have no idea.
Right.
Well, they have a dog that's a pet, and they can it sit, stay, and not crap on my house,
Right, but ironically, those dogs could be search and rescue dogs because they're no special planet.
They all have noses. They all have olfactory abilities. Just how we train them to do what we want.
But the handler is truly a technician. So when you talk about change of behavior or dog alerts, it could be something as simple as their breathing patterns. Their tail stops for 1 second. There's a little head jerk.
Exactly.
So they're so subtle, but people think of Rin Tin Tin where Lassie goes and brings rescuers to get Timmy out of the well. Yeah. But you have to really do this well, which you have for 40 years. You have to be so in tune with the dog's bodies and behaviors that your individual dog, because it's not like a computer where a red light goes off or a green light goes off. It could be just a twitch of the head, and you'll know that the dog is onto something. All right, now we got that. Cadaver dogs, when we deal with drugs, it's simple. You find the dog alerts, you find heroin, you test it, it's heroin. You find it, whatever it is. But with cadavers, there are so many complicated decomposition, other animals. It's really, really extraordinarily complicated. Therefore, it requires a very detailed explanation, particularly when you go to court, of what a handler is explaining to the jury, because juries just don't understand it. And you've been immensely helpful for me, actually, getting innocent people off the hook by testimony by somebody that really wasn't legitimate. So I appreciate that, and certainly the person that got off the hook for the murder was appreciated for that. So now let's talk about, we have a friend of ours, Tom Sullivan. He's listening. He's one of him and his mother are my, I think the only two listeners. But we got Tom Sullivan, Todd Manning.
Tom, I apologize.
Well, we got to tell a story. I brought it up. We got to get because we're talking off the air. So after all this, and as you said, the twilight of your career, after you do all this amazing stuff, you go on to the New York City Bomb Squad.
Yes, I mean, so after 9/11, a lot of people did retire. A lot of talented detectives left and moved on to retirement since 9/11. So they were looking for a kennel master, trainer, to train the NYPD Bomb Squad dogs, which I had no experience in. I trained cadaver, I trained search and rescue, I trained patrol,
right.
But I'd never trained. But I know odor, I know dogs.
Thing. Odor is odor is
and
odor.
A couple of my good friends said, put in for it. I had put in for it earlier, and then they didn't pick me up originally, but they did pick me up at the end of my career. So I went, and Tommy was one of the first guys.
Sullivan.
Tommy Sullivan took me under his wing, and I did become a bomb tech. They did send me to bomb school, and become a technician, and also I was the trainer, kennel master. So I did get to experience being on a team, working with these talented detectives from the bomb squad, which I had a lot of time on the job, but I was a rookie.
In the bomb business.
Rookie in the bomb business, yeah. But I had 19 years on the department. So I think one of my first calls, Tommy was with me, and we get called out to a bank robbery. I don't know if you remember, out in the 109 Precinct on Union Turnpike. It was pouring rain. I just remember it took us a long time to get there from the office, and it was legit. It was a legit job.
It was legit.
Guys robbing the bank before Christmas, and could have turned into one of these dog day afternoon type things.
Right.
And he had some military background. He worked for the phone company, and luckily the cops were able to apprehend him, anti-crime, grab him before anything turned out. But he was robbing the bank, and he left a device, which turned out to be a hoax device, and I had to go in and be the bomb tech by myself.
So explain what that is. So Detective Sullivan, your mentor, your training guy, took you under his wing.
He was my training guy.
So when you say you're the bomb bag, that means you got to get suited up in one of these suits and go.
You're going to be the guy going in downrange and handling the package or device. So there's two guys on the job, and there's usually a sergeant with you. So this guy was the real deal. They're talking to the guy, and he's giving them all the wrong answers. And the sergeant was nervous about the job, but Tommy's like, "Hey, you got this." He's just like, "You got this."
He says that to you, right?
I'm shooting up, and I've been involved in a lot of stuff, but nerves take over. And
right.
I just remember walking across Northern Boulevard. It's pouring rain. Obviously, they cleared the area. They stopped all the traffic, and I just remember getting wet and rain. And I'm in this 90-pound Kevlar bomb suit. I walk into the bank. I see it was a Christmas present wrapped up, and had the blinking light. It looked legit, Mm-hmm. Tommy's like, "Don't worry about it, Don't worry about it. Tommy's like, so I go in, and you have to X-ray it, and I just remember trying to put the X-ray and the phone kept ringing on the manager's desk, because he put it by the manager because he wanted to get into the vault. Right. And every time the phone rang, it was like I would jump, I was like, I'm trying to put the cassette behind it. And I just remember after taking the pictures, we're gonna develop them. It turns out it was a hoax device. And I go, "Tommy, why do you keep calling me on the phone?" He takes the helmet off. I'm sweating, and he's like, "Why would I call you on the phone?" The phone kept ringing. He goes, "That's just a coincidence. I'm not calling. I'll leave out some of the language, but I didn't call you."
Right. I can imagine.
He almost like seen that airplane, like smack me in the face,
right. like batting, just snap out of it. Right.
I go every time the phone rang, I got nervous. He goes, "Just a coincidence. Someone's calling the bank."
Right. Well, I don't think
it's kind of funny,
humor. Yeah, you have to have that humor.
Laughing. And it turned out to be, it wasn't. It was not a device. It was all,
Right, but it's the unknown. You don't have that when you're going in, when you're crossing Northern Boulevard.
Put the helmet back on. He smacks me, and he goes, "Get back in there, and I'll take care of it." Because you just go in, and now you cut it open, and you
just disarm it.
Right. But it was
but that's a great story, and again to Tom Sullivan's credit, I mean, you guys are the real deal. This is like Hurt Lock or anything else. This isn't just a little BS.
Well, you treat everything like it's the real deal till it's not the real deal. So you're always going to have some sense of nervousness. I don't care how many years you got on, how much experience you have.
Of course not. And the other thing is, we talked about this over and over during and after these episodes. You can't prepare for anything like this. You reminded me of an incident where we had a wall bounds collapse. I had a wall bound collapse in my jurisdiction in Nassau County. and I knew that you were really on the forefront of search and rescue. Nassau County at the time didn't have search and rescue dogs, so I was called to this wall bounds that collapsed. And again, with hindsight, you get all the answers, but when you don't know, it's the middle of the night,
Right.
there's sparks, there's electrical things, there's smoke coming out of the building. You can almost not even duplicate that if you wanted to. How do you duplicate all of the things that are happening? And I needed to go in to search with my dog, who really wasn't trained, but as you said, he can find live bodies, criminals, so why can't he go in and maybe find some...
Exactly, you just treat it like a building club.
Just a building club.
A building search, actually.
Yeah, and then you came in and
yeah, it's
provided
funny
your
because I was
expertise.
actually out hurt from... I never got hurt, but I was actually out hurt, I think, from an RMP accident. And I got the phone call. And they're like, why are they calling me? I'm out sick. And it's like, hey, our operations is calling me because your operations from your job called us to say, can you have a dog handler? And I was it. And I lived 5 minutes away. I got in my car, drove, and there's Mike. And it's like, hey.
Hey, Robbie, what's happening to you?
I said, I'm not on sick anymore. My back doesn't, and I had to go in and, because they didn't know if someone was potentially trapped, cashiers, because of, I guess the snow or the ice or something collapsed the roof down. I mean, I don't even remember the year, honestly, but I'm like, this is the closest job I've ever had to my actual house.
5 minutes of in your backyard. And what was the conclusion? Did you actually go deploy your dog inside the building? Or
I don't think I did, because I think you guys, they had accountability and they said everybody's accounted for. So they don't think anybody's yet. So they thought maybe one of the employees could have been trapped.
Right. But at that point, it'd be ridiculous to send a dog in.
I just remember we hung out, we had coffee.
Yeah, it was like a small world.
And then I got some overtime.
Yeah, we got some overtime. We got to reminisce a little bit. And that's the other kind of thing. I mean, at that time, not anymore, but the canine community, the law enforcement canine community, is pretty small, tiny.
Even nationally.
Right.
Because even like, just to go back to the World Trade Center, I'd been on the FEMA team for a while. I deployed sometimes, and I was an instructor. I got to meet dog handlers from around the country. Now 9/11 happens. Now all these people are coming to be stationed at 9/11 and at the Jacob Javits Center. So not only am I dealing with 9/11 and what I have to do, people are literally calling my phone. Hey, Bobby, where are you? I'm like, hey, I'm busy. We're at the Jacob Javits. All these dog handlers that I had trained with or trained are now got my back, so to speak.
Yeah.
Which is kind of amazing.
It's kind of an amazing journey.
Did I see them all? No, of course not. But did I run into some of them? I'm like, hey, thanks for being here. They stayed a week or so.
Yeah, it's a close-knit family. But I got to talk about one canine handler you may remember. And in NYPD, we talked about empty suits, right? We had empty suits, meaning people that occupied a suit but didn't do anything. So this brings up my friend, don't get nervous, my friend Todd Mayer. Do you know, you remember Todd Mayer? All right, so if you look up empty suit in the police dictionary, you'll see a police...
Todd, I apologize again.
This isn't his fault. I have
nothing to do with this segment.
Right, look up empty suit in the police dictionary, you'll see a picture of Todd Mayer and his dog Lucky. But no, he's listening, he's one of my faithful listeners. Another guy retired in Florida. But Tom Sullivan, he's the real deal for sure. You are certainly the real deal. I can't compare...
I'm coming to Florida soon, guys, so...
He's retiring to Singer Island. I don't see it happening, but we'll see how long that lasts. But this was great. This was incredible. As I said, I could do 10 episodes, but I really want to connect the dogs. The dogs is at the core of this. His career is obviously a heroic one, but at the end of the day, the dogs were doing the work. He interpreted the dog's behavior. He deployed with the dogs in these very dangerous situations, but it was the dog and the dog's nose that saved lives, saved people, and it really was...
And just to piggyback what you're saying, my last dog actually got his detective shield like a year before I did. So there you go. Right. When he went to the bomb squad, he's automatically a detective. It took me a year and a half to get mine.
And I used to laugh even then, back in the 80s. The dogs would go out for blood. We tell them, take them for the best blood work.
He got a field promotion after 9/11 from the police commission. I had to wait till I went to the bomb squad.
Yeah. Some things are just not fair. It's a dog's life, But yeah, I give him a lot of credit. Like I said, I've devoted my life to the business of dogs, but he's really, to this day, he's on call right now. His phone could go off, and after 40 years, he could be at the next natural disaster or intentional terrorist attack. So we give him a lot of credit. We thank him. He's a friend, colleague for 40-something years. We'll be hearing from him again. We're going to follow his career. Thanks again, Bob Schnell.
Right.
It's always a pleasure having you. And pay attention to these episodes. Go Google the NYPD or whatever the hell you do. Look it up, and our podcast on NYPD. Tune in next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching another exciting episode of the Dish on Dogs podcast. You can also watch us on YouTube on the Dish on Dogs podcast. If you're a listener, you can catch us on iTunes, Spotify, and all your other podcast platforms. For more information, click the link in the description. We'll see everybody next time.